They teach you that women are divine gifts given to men by creation, that their hearts are forged from tenderness and healing powers, that their love runs deeper, purer, softer, that they are angels on earth, a cure for wounded souls like yours. And you believe it. Of course you believe it. Who wouldn't? When since childhood, your earliest stories portrayed her as the hero's ultimate prize, the muse, the mother, the angel waiting at the end of your journey. And you? You are the conqueror, the protector, the one kneeling down offering your heart, hoping for love in return. You exhaust your existence just to be near her. But what if I told you that entire belief, the myth you grew up with, is not just wrong, but a cleverly set trap? What if women aren't the angels you imagined? What if the woman you love isn't your perfect match, but merely a mirror reflecting your deepest illusions? Aristotle didn't use poetry to describe women. He didn't romanticize them, didn't call them saints or goddesses. He looked directly into their nature without filter, avoidance, or fantasy. And what he saw makes all fairy tales suddenly laughable. He spoke this not out of hatred, but as a cold observer recording a biological truth. It's not morality, its function and nature, according to him, cannot lie. But don't misunderstand. This isn't biology anymore. It's about how this truth impacts the illusions you live with daily. If love at its most basic isn't connection, but a hierarchy disguised in devotion, if every time you thought you were in love, you were actually bowing down, worshiping an idealized image you've constructed, you've never truly seen her. What you see is the part of yourself longing to be healed. And what about her? She sees that. She sees the part of you eager to believe, and she knows how to reflect it. You think she cares? Perhaps. Or perhaps she's perfectly reenacting what you seek because she understands. That thirst gives her control. You think she's gentle? Look closely. Perhaps it's merely a performance, not necessarily manipulation. Sometimes an unconscious reflex, but still a performance. Because if Aristotle was right, every action, every version of her is shaped around what you desire. Not because she's weak, not because she's deceitful, but because nature created her that way. An adaptive, strategic being. Someone capable of becoming whatever it takes to survive. When you don't hold default power, you learn survival by bending around it. In a world built by men, women kneel not out of love, but from instinct. So I ask you, when you look at her, who are you really seeing? A thinking person with identity and depth, or a projection, a mirror, a role, the embodiment of emotional hungers you've never dared to name? The truth is, perhaps you never loved her. You loved feeling chosen, loved the gentleness you lacked, loved the role she embodied to heal what you lacked the courage to face. The issue isn't that you love her, it's that you love your idea of her, an image you created in your mind. Perfect, healing, understanding, tender, exactly where you hurt most. And she knows this. Exactly. That's her power. She doesn't need dominance, loudness, or force. She merely needs to reflect you, becoming the mirror of your desires. And when she does it well enough, when she becomes the echo chamber for your emotional illusions, you fall, you surrender. Not because she's stronger, but because you've willingly handed her power. Not because she's divine, but because you are lost, and she has become your emotional lifeline. But what's the price for holding on to her? Your identity. You exchange your true self for a reflection, a blurred role. And then there's nothing left of you. You think you're weak, giving, sacrificing for love. No. You're bargaining. You're placing your masculinity on the altar of approval, silently praying she'll look at you and say, "You're enough." But what happens if she never intends to say that? What if she's never truly seen you? Only the version of you she can mold, shape, exploit. And this is the truth no one dares speak aloud, because it's too cruel, too real. She doesn't seek truth. She seeks advantage, not from cruelty, but instinct. When you open up, she doesn't listen with emotion. She listens strategically. When you confess your past, she doesn't empathize. She analyzes. She learns your patterns, looking for leverage, weaknesses, places to grip control. She's not evil, but she's not innocent either. She's not the cause. She's a reaction, an echo, an adaptation, a highly evolved form navigating an environment where she lacks default power. And you think that makes her lesser? Not at all, because someone without structural power becomes a master of subtlety. You call her emotional. She's precise like surgery. You think she's feeling no, she's scanning data. Every look, smile, silence, every subtle shift in your tone is recorded. She must master one thing: how to become indispensable to a man subconsciously fearful of her difference. And that's something you never saw clearly. Your love for her isn't love, it's dependency. Her love for you isn't care, it's calibration. She doesn't need to dominate, just to become essential, the voice in your head during decisions, the sanctuary you run to when weak, the approval you crave like oxygen, calling it romance. No, it's submission disguised as poetry. But don't blame her. She didn't create this game. She merely learned it quickly. Men built the system. Women learned to survive within it. You conquer the world with war and iron. She conquers inside you with softness and subtle suggestions. Not because she's weak, but because she observes, learns, adapts. She doesn't seek domination over your body. She seeks residence in your mind. And she succeeded. She lives in your emotional hunger, your insecurities, your need to feel desired. It's not love, it's control so subtle you mistake it for emotional chemistry. Invisible enough you call it destiny. But destiny doesn't remember your wounds. She does. She remembers exactly what makes you feel small. She learns your rhythm, your language, because every detail reveals a pathway to your core self-esteem. You thought she was fragile? No, she's strategic. You thought she needed protection? No, she just needed proximity. And when she saw you'd trade yourself for the illusion of love, she stopped seeing you as a man. You became a means, a resource, not to harm you, but for her to find her place. She doesn't move toward you. She orbits you. She doesn't fight for power. She becomes what power needs not love, evolution. And evolution doesn't care about your feelings. So here, you kneel before gentleness, but it's actually strategy. You give yet feel empty because you never loved the woman herself, only the story you created. And she knows it. She memorized her role, choosing it perfectly because it gave her advantage. So why would she destroy your illusion when that illusion gives her power without confrontation? Why would she dismantle the pedestal you placed her on when it lets her control without being labeled a ruler? You call her mysterious, feminine, complex. But the truth is, there's nothing complicated here. You're just unwilling to see the clarity behind her gentle facade. She doesn't hide. You close your eyes, because you know if one day you dare to face it, if you have the courage to admit her kindness might be strategy, her tenderness a tool, her affection not a reflection of your worth, but a deliberate reflection of her will, you must accept another truth. The person you thought you were through her eyes was just a sweet lie you desperately needed. enough to trade your authentic self. She didn't lie to you with words. She didn't need to act because you've already deceived yourself by the meaning you created. She simply played the role you wrote for her. And when that role is no longer useful, she withdraws. When she no longer needs you, the play ends. And you, once intoxicated by your starring role, begin to claim she's changed, that she doesn't love you as before, that she's grown distant. But perhaps she never changed. Perhaps she just stopped pretending. Perhaps she stopped nurturing the pleasing version of herself, the version that made you emotionally manageable. Now, you sit here confused, feeling shattered. But you're not broken because you lost her. You're shattered because your reflection vanished with her. You didn't lose love. You lost the part of yourself that existed only in her gaze. The vulnerable part, the incomplete part, collapsed when her gaze turned away. Now you're empty. And the most painful realization is you've never truly felt whole. You're not a complete man. You're a patchwork assembled from a woman's gaze, a woman who knows exactly when to make you feel loved and when to withhold, so you never feel entirely enough. It's not her fault. It's yours, because you built your self-worth around her attention. And when she stopped looking, your identity collapsed. Aristotle didn't write these things to attack women. He described nature. But you can't bear that clarity. You'd rather be enchanted than face reality. Rather be needed than understood. Rather be loved through illusion than exposed by truth. But she sees, she always sees. She sees how desperately you need her perfection. She sees how much you crave recognition, and she uses it, not out of malice, but instinctive survival. Because if Aristotle is right, when a man is incomplete, reacting rather than creating, the only power he has is controlling attention, manipulating emotion, using wounds as tools to feel valued. And that's where illusions begin. The scariest part, when she does it skillfully enough, you don't even notice. You call it fate, magic, love. But it's not magic, it's precise calculation. You call her mysterious, yet she's perfectly clear. She's simply too subtle for you to comprehend. Every silence, tear, upward glance at just the right moment. Nothing is accidental. Everything is intentional. She isn't emotionally lost. She's so fluent in emotion. She understands the structure of your heart better than you know yourself. Quietly, bit by bit, she adjusts you, not through force or criticism, but through strategy, silence, and glances, until you speak her lines and live by her rhythm without realizing you've forgotten your own voice. That's when a man collapses, not because she's stronger, but because he no longer knows who he is. At first, you mistook it for intimacy, connection, closeness. But when cracks appear, when the pedestal you built for her shakes, you see clearly. She doesn't admire you. She manipulates you. She doesn't uplift you. She reshapes you into a more comfortable version for herself. And when you begin resisting, daring to say no, holding on to your true self, she withdraws. Not out of hurt, but because control slips away. Without control, she loses advantage. And without advantage, intimacy means nothing to her. Because in her world, intimacy isn't connection, it's choreography. You've been dancing her rhythm without even knowing who composed the music. You dance because it feels like love, because it's familiar, because it makes you forget loneliness. But it's not grace, it's gravity. You didn't fall in love. You fell into orbit, circling her moods, silences, needs, and reactions. You called it closeness, but closeness without clarity is emotional imprisonment. You once had your own voice, boundaries, direction, but now you hesitate, censor yourself, twist into safer versions, You say it's for love, but real love never requires erasing yourself. True love doesn't demand silence, softening, shrinking to please someone else. If the price of tenderness is losing your voice, your will, your backbone, that's not love. That's rehearsal for submission. Yet sadly, you still defend her, claiming she's hurt, complicated. But perhaps the scariest truth is she was never confused. She was always clear, transparent as glass. She knew exactly what she wanted and precisely how to reach it inside you. You thought her emotional. No, she's precise as a conductor, leading an emotional orchestra. You thought her overwhelmed. No, she was calculating. Every outburst, every breakdown, every withdrawal wasn't weakness, but a tactic. Soft, flexible, and subtle. In a world where men are default and women exceptions, the only way to survive is making men willingly surrender their power. And you've done that. You gave away your control, believing it noble, mature, profound love. Yet, in reality, you became predictable. And predictable men are easily broken. So when she pressed your buttons to weaken you, it wasn't accidental. She mapped those buttons from the beginning. Every compliment was reconnaissance. Every "I love your honesty" was calibration, measuring your limits, and self-protection. She doesn't need your soul. She needs your patterns, your operation manual. Once she owns that, she owns you. Yet you naively called it intimacy, but its influence masked as love, control sprinkled with tenderness, whispers at the right time, giving you the understanding you've always craved. And here is the deepest betrayal, not that she deceived you, but that deep down, you knew she never admired you as you believed. Behind those eyes, she saw not a man, but a project, a structure she could rearrange. Your strength wasn't respected, it was tolerated. Your wounds weren't healed, they were recorded, saved for future use. You thought she cared for your wounds? No, she memorized their location. Because whoever knows where you hurt can choose exactly when you crumble. Now you're stripped bare, panicking, empty, heavy. And as you fall, seeing yourself without her filters or the coding labeled loved, only you remain. Is that enough to start over for the first time without others defining you? But this isn't the end. It's a beginning. For the first time, you have no one else to blame, no shadow to cling to, no story to hide behind. Because finally, you're forced to confront the question you've spent your life skillfully avoiding. Who am I without her? Without emotional training wheels? Without praise soothing your self-esteem? Without the role you daily played to feel valuable? What's left when all of that falls away? And if the answer is silence, stay with it. Don't run, because that silence is your purest truth, the genuine foundation from which you can start again. It's the first thing, after years, no longer hidden by expectations or the fear of being abandoned. You were taught to become a hero, but a hero in someone else's story. With scripts already written, you're strong, she's soft. You give, she receives. You prove yourself, she approves. But what if that story never existed? What if that woman was never your savior, but simply a mirror not reflecting your strength, but exposing your fears? The truth is, you never really loved her. Not entirely. What you loved was feeling chosen, validated, escaping your inner chaos by placing your entire worth in someone else's gaze. You loved being given purpose in exchange for a validating look. Now, when she leaves, you aren't broken, you're exposed. You say she used you, but what about your use of her? You turned her into your life's meaning, burdened her with moral definitions, lofty standards, expectations you couldn't meet yourself. You didn't want a partner. You wanted permission to feel worthy of love without confronting your own brokenness. But she never signed that contract. She simply stepped into the role you built and performed perfectly because you needed her to. And now, Aristotle's words echo like an awakening. Women aren't demons or saints or goddesses. They're simply mirrors bent by biology, refined by survival instinct. Not broken, just different. Not created to lead, but to adapt. And if you refuse to see this, if you keep dreaming and romanticizing, you're not her companion, but a victim of your own denial. Yet from that lowest point, where all illusions collapse, emerges a powerful moment. When you stop seeing women as solutions to your inner chaos, you realize you are the answer. When you stop chasing reflections, you start building reality. When you stop performing to be loved, you begin to truly exist. A man who constructs himself no longer fears someone else's absent gaze. He doesn't collapse when attention is withdrawn, nor shatter when tenderness is withheld. Because now, he doesn't need someone else's gaze to confirm his existence. He stands present, owning himself fully. She'll feel this and she'll test it. Because the moment you stop orbiting her, gravity shifts, structures change roles, the myth dies, and something raw, authentic emerges. Not romance, not passion, truth. She might not like it. She might leave, might try pulling you back into being the man who once knelt for her. But if you remain steady in your core, something profound shifts. You won't need her gentleness, perfection, or role play. You won't need her to be anyone other than a real human being. And in that space, without illusions, what remains is unconditional connection. Love without leverage, intimacy without bonds. But that can only happen when you let the myth burn. So let it burn. Let romantic fantasies crumble. Let pedestals shatter. Let false stories drown in their sentimentality. Then rise alone, honest, unedited, unmasked. See women not as saviors or villains, but as mirrors reflecting natural differences. Not lower, not higher, just different. And only when you no longer need her to feel complete can you truly meet her, not through illusions, but through genuine presence, unbound and authentic.